The CEO told me to know my place at 9:04 in the morning. And by the way his voice changed halfway through the sentence, I knew he thought I'd swallow it. I was already sitting down when it happened. Conference room. Same table I'd sat at for years. Someone from human resources on one side. The CEO across from me. Hands folded like this was just another box to check before lunch. I honestly thought this was routine. Review, numbers, maybe a half smile at the end. The paper slid across the table. I didn't grab it. Didn't need to. I could tell by the weight of it that nothing meaningful had changed. Another document followed. This one got a finger tapping the corner. Like it deserved attention. New director, fresh hire. Never touched our systems. Never been on call. The number at the bottom jumped out anyway. Almost double mine. The explanation came fast. Smooth words. The kind people use when they want you to stop asking questions. Leadership track. Strategic value. Then the sentence landed. Slow, clean. No anger in it at all. He has leadership. You don't. Know your place. Nobody flinched. That part hurt more than the words. A third page appeared. Knowledge transfer form. My name already typed in. Timeline filled out. This wasn't a conversation. This was an order. Train him. Document everything. Smile while doing it. My hands were shaking, which annoyed me. I hate when my body reacts before my brain catches up. Still, I didn't argue. Didn't list accomplishments. Didn't beg. I'd done that once before in my career. Never again. I reached into my bag. The envelope had been sitting there longer than I wanted to admit. I wrote it on a Sunday night. Convinced I was being dramatic. Turns out I was just early. I set it on top of his paperwork. Signed. Dated. Effective immediately. The room went quiet. Not awkward quiet. Heavy quiet. The kind that presses on your ears and makes people hold their breath without realizing it. I stood up. The wall clock said 9:04. My name is Kaylee Morrison, 45 years old. As I picked up my bag, I felt the shift. Smile stiffened. Someone cleared their throat like that might fix things. Nobody stopped me. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Her Fear. Names, events, and situations have been adapted for storytelling purposes. Inspired by real workplace dynamics and emotional experiences, the hallway smelled like burnt coffee. My badge still worked when I hit the elevator button. I didn't know it wouldn't for long. I just knew I wasn't walking back into that room again. I didn't announce anything when I walked out. No speech, no dramatic pause, just the scrape of my chair and the soft thud of my bag against my hip. The hallway swallowed me. Fluorescent lights. That same stale coffee smell that never quite leaves the floor. I made it halfway down before my phone vibrated. One short line on the screen. Security update. Access revocation in progress. Not a call. Not a conversation. Just a process doing what it was told. I kept walking. At the elevator. My badge hit the scanner and bounced back with a sharp beep. Red light. Like I'd done something wrong. I tried again. Slower this time. Like politeness might change the outcome. Same beep. Someone behind me shifted their weight. Suddenly very interested in the wall, I stepped aside and took the stairs. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone buzzed again. Another update. Systems. Credentials. All scheduled. All automatic. No human fingerprints left anywhere near it. Good. That was cleaner. Outside. My car was exactly where I left it. I sat there longer than I needed to. Hands resting on the steering wheel. Still warm from the sun. My fingers finally stopped shaking. That part surprised me. I thought about the nights I stayed late because something felt off. The weekends I answered calls because nobody else knew where to look. I remembered telling myself it was temporary. That respect would show up eventually. That was a lie I kept telling myself because it was comfortable. I should have left earlier. That's on me. I stayed because it was familiar. Because starting over sounded exhausting. Because I told myself loyalty mattered more than dignity. Stupid math. I own that. I started the engine. The radio came on too loud and I turned it off without thinking. I didn't need noise. As I pulled out of the garage, My phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't look. I already knew what it would say. The line had been drawn. I was on the other side of it now. I didn't see any of it myself. I heard it later. Pieced together from messages people sent when they realized I wasn't coming back. Apparently, he walked into ops like the room belonged to him now. Hands open. Voice steady. That polished calm people mistake for control. Words came fast. Strategy. Alignment. Risk posture. Enough noise to fill the space so no one else could. A junior analyst hesitated near the edge of the desk cluster. You could tell from the way she leaned in, then pulled back. Someone finally brought my name into the air, not loud, just enough to test it. The laugh cut through before the thought could finish forming. Short, sharp, dismissive, relax. She's just technical. That landed harder than he'd probably meant it to. A few heads dropped. Nobody pushed back. Alerts started stacking after that. Not the dramatic kind. No flashing red, just more and more yellow boxes piling up on the screens. False positives climbing. Real signals getting buried under the noise. The room filled with that low server hum, steady and wrong, like a headache you can't shake. Slack chimes kept going off, overlapping each other, until someone muted the channel entirely. One of the senior analysts pointed at a graph, tracing the spike with a finger. The shape didn't make sense. It never behaved like that unless something underneath was drifting. A suggestion floated out. Careful, measured, slow the feeds, rebalance the thresholds. A hand waved it away mid-sentence. Dashboards went quiet. The room got louder because of it. The junior analyst stopped arguing after that. She nodded once, tight, and turned back to her screen. Her shoulders went rigid, like she was bracing for something she couldn't name yet. From what I was told, that's when the unease set in. Not panic, not fear, just the sense that something important had been muted along with the alerts. By the time anyone realized how much they weren't seeing anymore, the room had already stopped listening. By 9:31, the room stopped pretending. I wasn't there, but I know the shift. People described it the same way, using different words but the same tone, voices lower, sentences shorter. Nobody joking anymore. The alerts didn't line up with what the screens were showing. That part was obvious even to people who didn't live inside those systems. Traffic looked normal. Load looked fine. But the logs were drifting. Timestamps out of sequence. Events showing up without causes attached. Someone floated the idea of a restart. It hung in the air for a second, then died. Restarting would wipe the volatile logs. That meant losing evidence. That meant compliance problems. Not restarting meant staying blind while things kept moving underneath them. Dry mouths. Fingers tapping desks. The air conditioner kicked on late. Loud enough to break concentration and not strong enough to help. That's when my name came up. Not confidently. Not like a solution. Just once. Quiet. Like a word people weren't sure they were allowed to say anymore. Silence followed it. Then the realization spread. Not all at once. Piece by piece. The monitoring layer wasn't vendor software. It wasn't something you could look up. It didn't live in a run book that anyone had bothered to read. I'd built it custom. Adjusted it over years. Tuned it by feel as much as data. A little too sensitive here. A little forgiving there. It worked because I watched it constantly. None of that was written down in a way that helped now. A manager stepped back from the screens and folded his arms. Another checked their phone instead of making eye contact. Someone suggested escalating to leadership. Someone else nodded too fast. Relieved not to be the one deciding. Ownership evaporated. Every sentence turned plural. We should, we might, we need alignment. From what I was told, nobody wanted to be the person whose name ended up next to the decision. So the decision kept sliding forward, minute by minute, while the system kept drifting. By the time escalation actually happened, the room had already agreed on one thing without saying it out loud. The person who knew wasn't there anymore. I was home with my shoes kicked off and the coffee halfway through its drip when the knocking started. Not polite, not patient, too fast, like whoever it was needed the door open more than they needed manners. I didn't rush. I let the machine finish its cycle. Poured the mug, felt the heat through the ceramic. Then I opened the door. The suit was wrinkled in places it never was before. Tie loose. Hair off by just enough to notice. The face tried for control and missed. He stepped forward like momentum might solve this. I didn't move. Words came out uneven. Federal auditors, defense contracts, questions no one could answer. He kept glancing past me like the fix might be sitting on my couch. A breath. A reset. Another attempt. They needed me. Immediately, just today. A few hours. Maybe less. The tone shifted, softened, the way people do when they realize authority isn't working anymore. Money came next. More than before, a title adjustment. Reporting lines changed. He stacked the offers quickly, like speed might overwhelm resistance. I waited until the list ran out. The silence landed hard. He filled it with another promise, then stopped himself. I repeated his words back to him. No volume, no edge, just accurate. You told me to know my place. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Maybe, or regret. It didn't matter which. I stepped back and closed the door. Not slammed, just closed. The deadbolt turned with a solid click that felt heavier than it should have. The smell of fresh coffee filled the entryway. It was grounding in a way I hadn't expected. People think revenge is loud. They picture yelling, doors slamming, speeches rehearsed in the mirror. It's not like that. It's quiet. It's restraint. It's deciding not to fix something that was never yours to break. The knocking started again. Slower this time. Careful. I didn't answer. I took my mug into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. Listening to my phone vibrate on the other side of the wall, I didn't pick it up. I already knew what it would say. I didn't watch it happen live. The phone kept lighting up on the counter anyway. Missed calls, Slack invites from channels I wasn't supposed to be in anymore. Someone even tried email, like a different app might change my mind. I turned the screen face down. My laptop was open at the kitchen table. New company, new login. Onboarding forms that asked normal things in a normal tone. Emergency contact. Preferred name. Whether I needed an extra monitor shipped to my house. It felt strange. Like cheating on a job I hadn't officially stopped thinking about yet. I filled in the boxes slowly, pen clicking between answers even though most of it was digital. Muscle memory. The buzz of an incoming email rattled the table just enough to be annoying. I ignored it and kept going. Later, I heard how they brought in consultants. Emergency ones. The kind that don't blink at invoices with 6 figures spelled out in words. Smart people. Real experience. No shortcuts. They saw the symptoms right away. The drift. The noise. The alerts that didn't match reality. Screens full of activity with no story tying it together. They chased patterns. Ran diagnostics. Argued in tight circles. From what the junior analyst told me later, one of them finally leaned back and admitted it out loud. This system wasn't broken. It was misunderstood. That part hit harder than I expected. I felt bad for the team still inside that room. The ones staring at dashboards, trying to make sense of something they'd never been taught to own. The ones who'd stayed late with me before, trusting that I'd catch what they missed. The guilt sat there for a while, heavy, uncomfortable. Then it loosened. I remembered the paper sliding across the table. The knowledge transfer form. My name already typed in. The assumption that I'd clean up one last mess with a smile. I finished the final onboarding step and closed the laptop. The phone buzzed again. I let it buzz. Caring didn't mean rescuing. Walking away didn't erase what I'd given. Both things could exist at the same time. Even if it took 16 hours for my body to believe it, I found out because a junior engineer texted me after midnight. Not a call. Not panic. Just a screenshot and one sentence. Did you write this? The image showed an internal page I hadn't opened in months. No fancy formatting. No comments. Just blocks of text and a rough diagram I'd drawn during a long night when something almost went wrong and nobody wanted to slow down to fix it properly. I remembered that night. Cold pizza. Coffee I kept reheating and never finishing. They told me how it happened. The consultants were arguing in circles, pointing at symptoms, chasing each other's theories. One of them leaned back, frustrated, and asked if anyone had documentation from before the last infrastructure change. The junior engineer went digging, past the polished decks, past the vendor links, past the pages everyone bookmarked because they looked official. She found mine, scrolling, pausing, reading it twice, then a third time. Slower. Someone read a line out loud, not confidently, carefully, like they didn't want to jinx it. The room went quiet again. Different quiet this time. Focused, heavy. They followed the steps exactly. No shortcuts, no improvising, one change at a time. Logs started lining up. The noise dropped. Real signals came back into view. System stabilized. By then, it didn't matter. Audits were already triggered. Compliance teams were looped in. Contracts were flagged for review. Optics were gone. Trust had left earlier and never circled back. The junior engineer told me she watched the consultants stare at the screen when it finally worked. Relief mixed with something else. Embarrassment, maybe, or understanding. The coffee on their table had gone cold. Nobody noticed. Nobody reads warnings until they turn into instructions. I learned that a long time ago. I just never thought I'd be the warning people skipped. I set my phone down and didn't respond right away. There was nothing to add. The page had done its job. The damage had already chosen its shape. I wasn't in the room, but the aftermath had a sound to it. Everyone described it the same way. Echoing voices, long pauses, someone clearing their throat too often, like that might buy time. Board meetings stacked back to back. No press releases, no announcements. Just calendar blocks disappearing and names quietly vanishing from org charts. The new director didn't get fired. Not officially. His title changed. Strategic advisory, no team, no budget. The kind of role designed to look like a landing instead of a fall. Human resources went quieter than usual, then gone. One inbox stopped replying. Another auto-forwarded to legal. The CEO stayed. He had to sit there and explain how one employee walking out triggered federal audits. Contract freezes. And a review nobody could spin. He tried to frame it as complexity, as bad timing, as an unfortunate convergence of events. The room didn't buy it. Someone asked for numbers. They came out slowly, carefully. No rush this time. Lost contracts, emergency consultants, compliance penalties, opportunity costs nobody liked admitting were real. Tens of millions. Spelled out, line by line. All of it traced back to one decision. One meeting. One sentence delivered too casually. They could have paid me a little more. Adjusted a title. Listened when I said something didn't feel right. Instead, they wanted obedience. Clean lines. Easy control. That part was cheaper. Until it wasn't. I heard the CEO's voice cracked when he tried to summarize it. Not emotional, just tired. Like someone who finally understood the cost of pretending authority was the same thing as understanding. There's no spreadsheet cell for ego. It doesn't show up as a line item. It still compounds interest, though quietly, patiently, until the bill arrives and there's nowhere left to forward it. The email came in on a Tuesday afternoon. Quiet subject line. Careful tone. No urgency this time. No pressure. I opened it and recognized the voice immediately. Apologetic without groveling. Polished, but not smug anymore. They laid it all out. A revised title. Direct reporting. Authority spelled out instead of implied. Compensation adjusted to reflect impact, not hierarchy. Everything I'd asked for before. Back when asking still felt embarrassing. I read it once. Then again, slower. I didn't feel angry. That surprised me. I'd expected some leftover heat, some urge to reply with a sharp line or a reminder of how long it took them to notice. None of that showed up. I just felt finished. My laptop fan hummed softly, steady, doing its job without drama. Sunlight hit the corner of the desk. Warming the wood where my coffee cup had been sitting for hours, I started typing a response. Deleted the first version. It sounded defensive. Tried again. Thank you for the offer. I appreciate the acknowledgement. I've already started in a new role and won't be returning. Simple, clean, honest. Before hitting send, I thought about my current team. The way people paused when I spoke, not because they were scared to talk, but because they were actually listening. The way concerns got addressed early, before they turned into emergencies. That part still felt unfamiliar. I was getting used to it. I sent the email and closed the laptop. The hum faded. The room stayed quiet. Sometimes the win isn't going back stronger. It's recognizing that you don't need to prove anything anymore. Not to them. Not to yourself. I stood up and stretched, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because they finally understood my value, but because I didn't need them to anymore. People listen to me now. Not in a performative way. Not the kind where they nod and keep doing what they planned anyway. When I talk, keyboards stop. Someone takes notes. Decisions slow down instead of rushing past me. That part still catches me off guard. There are days I'm in the middle of a meeting and my mind flashes back to that conference room. The paper sliding across the table. The way the word place was used like a boundary I wasn't supposed to cross. I don't spiral anymore, but I notice it. Like a scar you forget about until the weather changes. I used to ask myself why I stayed so long. I don't do that much now. I already know the answer. I stayed because I was good at surviving inside small spaces. I stayed because being needed felt close enough to being valued. I stayed because leaving felt like failure. I don't hate them. That would take more energy than they deserve. I don't forgive them either. Forgiveness would imply I'm still carrying it around. I moved. That's all. My office is quiet most days. The keyboard clicks are steady. My breathing doesn't hitch when someone higher up walks into the room. When something feels wrong, I say it out loud, and the room adjusts instead of pushing back. Once, during a review, someone tried to smooth over a concern I raised. The pause that followed wasn't uncomfortable, and it was corrective. The conversation shifted. That was new. That mattered. Here's the life lesson I didn't learn until it cost me years. Being respected isn't something you negotiate for after you've proven yourself. It's the baseline. And when someone tells you to know your place, they're not defining your limits. They're revealing theirs. My place now is simple. It's where my voice doesn't need permission. It's where my work speaks, without me having to translate it into something smaller. It's where I don't beg to be seen because I already am. That's enough for me.